That's right. For this week's main topic, well, we're Disney fans. So there's one thing that Disney fans do. We wait in many, many lines. It's not Disney, and that doesn't matter what you're talking about. It could be a Disney event. It could be a Disney park. If you're not waiting in a line, at least at some part of it. Well, the good thing about it is Disney does a good job of making sure you get some fun stuff going on for you, even when you're in lines, because if you know, that's right. We're continuing our If You Know, You Know series. I'm talking all about the Disney queues and the storytelling that goes on in Disney queues, right, Michelle?
Yeah. I mean, really, for some fans, the queues are like a big part of the experience. So
I think they set the stage so well for so many attractions. And sometimes you don't even realize it until you're actually in there and you've experienced it. Sometimes they're just fun cues. Sometimes they are actually things that you will come up later on within the attraction itself, but we'll get to all that. First, let's talk about this. Can we start with talking about how Disney itself as a company is pretty darn good at making lines move or setting up lines or knowing how to cue people in lines. We've all been to events or conferences or theaters or whatever it might be where you get there and people just have no idea how they're setting these things up. You don't know if you're here, if you're there. People are cutting in front of you because there's no management to that line. But Disney does that so much better, right, Michelle?
Oh, yeah. Whether you're in the parks or, like you're saying, at a conference, it's amazing what they can do with just tape on the floor and how well they can keep it coordinated.
That's right. Because if you know that tape on the floor is enough to keep you in line. And as a good Disney fan, you see that tape in line, you know where you're supposed to be and where you're supposed to go. It's just as simple as masking tape. Just put on the floor or put on the ground somewhere within the parks. You know that that's the line. Cross, move this way, whatever. So it's amazing that Disney has perfected that simple form, but as well as, of course, they do other things with gates and chain and all sorts of different things to help make sure you know where you're supposed to go and how to make the line work as smoothly as possible.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I know that there have been times that I've been in line and they like hold me off, or maybe the person in front of me, and they're moving chains and everything, and you're like, oh no, now I'm going to lose my space. And but it doesn't. Once it's all settled in, you realize, oh wait, I'm still behind the same person.
Right. It really is a science.
Yes.
It's actually amazing how Disney has over the years, over the 70 plus years that they've been doing theme parks, since, the beginning of Disneyland, how they've, perfected, how to, fit a lot of people in space, and be able to move them around and keep them in order and make it feel like maybe it's not as long as it might be, but also find ways, yes, to entertain you while you are waiting for sometimes hours in these attraction lines.
Yeah, for sure. It's like we're saying, it's part of the storytelling.
Yeah. So yeah, it does. It sets the mood for the attraction. It can be something a little bit silly, or it can be something, like the Haunted Mansion. It could be a little silly while you're in the attraction queue itself. But then there's also the tone over, it is still kind of spooky, which is kind of the Haunted Mansion in general. You want it to be, it's spooky and silly all at the same time. And even in the queue, that kind of takes place, right, Michelle?
Right. Yeah. And it gives anybody who's in line, they're kind of, that feeling of what's ahead.
Yeah. And, and it can continue into pre-shows. We can discuss on whether pre-shows are part of the queue or part of the attraction or both. You can talk about that as well. And they also, yes, sometimes you're going through a line and then you hit a pre-show and you're like, yay, here comes the attraction. And then you go into another line. Well, that kind of helps to soothe yourself. You kind of feel like you're moving along in that attraction as well. Again, we'll talk about all that. So, we're going to be talking a lot about, from things from like, hey, maybe a pirate cave, or maybe there's an interactive game that goes on while you're in the queue. There's different innovations for accessibility. And of course, we're going to talk about our favorite queues of all things. Took us this long, where we're 7+ years in to our favorite queues at Disney's attraction. But just ways to kind of get through those mind-numbing line that we all wait in all the time, because if you know,
You know.
right. So let's go ahead and start with some of this fun, right, Michelle?
Right. Yeah. And kind of try to categorize some of the things that we're going to talk about, and thought maybe let's start with, some of the topics related to the most immersive cues that are on there, that really help set the scene. And so, and if you're watching on YouTube here, like you see in the slide, you're not just in line, you're already inside the story. And, I thought this was a really neat picture of inside Tower of Terror, already again setting the mood and stuff. But, it's, I think one of the things I was, when I was doing research, first of all, there's a lot of stuff out there when you look at the psychology of cues and stuff like that. I really didn't want to put anything I wasn't sure Disney was really behind or saying, because there's a lot of stuff on the internet, and I don't know if I believed all of it. So anything that we talk
Not
about,
everything on the internet is true. I mean, come on.
I
If
know.
it's on the internet, it's fact. It's a fact.
Well, anything that we talk about today is stuff that I felt like was very reliable, like Disney sponsored kind of
Or stuff we've
information
experienced
or
for
stuff.
ourselves.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So, you know, but I did see somewhere that like the Imagineers use this space kind of like as act one of the story and letting it unfold. And so I thought that was kind of cute way of considering what do we see in cues. But let's start with some of the more nostalgic ones. And because those are the ones that not only are starting to get into the story, but there are a lot of times things that are tugging at your heart or something that reminds you of something as in your childhood. So let's start with some things like, and we're not going to go through every cue for sure. And
There's
hopefully,
so many we
I know
couldn't
there are.
possibly. Yeah.
Hopefully, we're going to capture your favorites, some people's favorites, but starting like with the Pirates of the Caribbean. I mean, you feel like you said you're transported into these caves. There's a lot of textures. There's little scenes, with like with the cannons and things like that that really start getting you into
Mhm.
that story. But I think a lot of people think of that as, something that is very nostalgic looking. Obviously, Haunted Mansion has a lot of nostalgic associated with it. Then there's the Jungle Cruise. Again, another one of these OG kind of attractions, whether you're saying Disneyland or Walt Disney World's version of Jungle Cruise. Personally, for me, the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland, I think is uh, a little bit more impactful. And we talked about like line management at the
Mhm.
start. You were talking about that. And it's always impressive to me at Disneyland, like when you're on the long queue and you have to actually go upstairs and back downstairs. And again, there's just like this little line on the floor that people really do follow.
Stay on one side or the other.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's always really impressive to see that people are going to abide by that. But
One
it,
of the things I love on the Jungle Cruise queue is
Mhm.
is the sounds, because you get like the radio C or whatever it is,
Right.
the radio station that's playing this old timey music and radio broadcasts and
Yes.
jokes
Right.
to you while you're in line, if you take the time to listen in. It's
That's
great.
true. If
Yeah.
you yeah, it does have a lot of things that are fun to listen to, or like you see little scenes there, like maybe behind some of the cages of, the people who are on excursion there or whatever, or working there, some of the things that they're involved with or do, some of their equipment. It's just very cute and loving it. I think Smuggler's Run, I mean, that's a big one where, you talk about nostalgia. If you are a Star Wars fan and you're going through that queue at in Smuggler's Run, I mean, it just takes you, it transports you completely onto that journey.
Agreed. And it's interesting to say something nostalgic when you're talking about an attraction that's only, as we're now, it's like 6 years old,
Mhm.
as we're recording this episode. But when you talk about Star Wars in general, for so many people who grew up around that franchise,
Right.
and yes, it takes you right to it, and then you get to those windows where you can look out and you're seeing the top of the Millennium Falcon itself that's out within Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but so many other things that are within there, including announcements, fun, different things there's a spaceship right there in the middle of it all. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's right. Very impressive. Then you talk about something like Midway Mania, thinking maybe more Hollywood studios where you're going through and you're seeing these giant toys of things that you can remember as a kid, whether you used them or you maybe have older siblings or relatives that had those around. It's just something that you you have a feeling. It really does evoke some feelings when you're going through that attraction and
Yeah,
that queue.
games and toys and all sorts of things that we grew up playing with, or you had friends that had, and you were jealous because they had them and you didn't, but you
Right.
went over and you got to enjoy them at their house or whatever it might be. All that stuff. And yeah, talk about nostalgia. That is a huge nostalgia factor when you go into, I mean, Toy Story in general is
Right.
wrapped around that. But then when you bring it to life as you're going through that queue, it's amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, there's just so much, and there's so much to see, so much. Again, it's something that is very much, whether you want to call it a distraction or a stimulation or whatever, but you are in this long
Mhm,
line, but you're really, again, it's, getting you to realize you're part of this place of this play toys, these
mhm.
around you and in Andy's room, and it's just really cool. Another one that I think has some issues of nostalgia, I think that you would agree to, or is Frozen Ever After.
Well, as we all know, hashtag real men love Frozen and hashtag real men love Frozen ever after. Yeah. You get in there and it just feels like once you're inside, you've been transported into Arendelle,
Mhm.
in this space there. And maybe just outside of Arendelle as you go by Wandering Oak and Sauna,
Right.
as well. And he comes and says hello to you from the
Yes.
sauna window.
Window, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's just such a small space, but there's still so much that you get to experience and go around. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway,
Mhm.
again, a lot of signs of nostalgia there, whether you're going through their queue and seeing things related to films with Mickey
in,
Mouse
in
and
Disneyland. I mean, there's a little bit of it in
mm,
Disney's Hollywood Studios, but
right,
really in Disneyland, it's like you're in the Mickey Mouse Hall of Fame, or museum or whatever,
right.
especially for the Mickey Mouse shorts, particularly. And where else in the world can you visit two theme parks? You're in Disneyland and you're also in Potato
Right.
Land when you're in the queue there. So you get a little bit of
Exactly.
both. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so, I mean, when we're talking about nostalgia, you're starting to get these feelings that you're experiencing as you're just in line, and then that just really falls into the story once you're on the attraction.
Yeah, and I know you have on here the list of Star Tours as well, and I think
Mhm.
Star Tours is interesting, especially now because Star Tours, one, it's another version of getting to. It was the first time when you were growing up that you got to experience Star Wars outside of the movies,
Mhm.
and kind of live that story. And then you get C-3PO and you get R2-D2, and it's
Mhm.
amazing. Now you also get nostalgia for the attraction itself because there are pieces of the original version of that attraction as you go throughout that queue, including sometimes you might see Captain Rex
Right.
right there, maybe malfunctioning a little bit, and so you kind of get a piece of that as well. But it's always a lot of fun in Star Tours.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think all of these that we're talking about here, um, really do in the queue make you feel something.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely, 100%. I completely agree with you, and it's part of what makes the attractions great.
right,
Again,
yeah.
you're just waiting in line, but it helps add to that attraction feeling as you're waiting in that line.
Yes, exactly. So, the next thing we want to draw your attention to are cues that actually help build the narrative of what's ahead. And so again, great storytelling, but there's some that are really maybe more impressive because it's not necessarily trying to work into nostalgia, but more, hey, there's a big story and this is a big attraction and here's what you can kind of start to experience or expect, and obviously, and we talked about it at the very beginning, Tower of Terror. I mean, first of all, there's a lot of artifacts there, but it just gives you that sense that time has stopped, but there's something foreboding. it just really, it's an eerie feeling, and you know something big is going to go wrong.
Right. And it just brings you into a hotel that obviously looks like it was a glamorous hotel at one point,
Right.
but then it's like time stopped, like in 1939 when the elevator had this giant accident, and
Right.
then it just everything halted in this hotel, and what you're seeing is the residuals of that it all leads into this tale that's being told within the attraction itself.
Exactly. Now, if you are a fan of watching those, they call it Imagineering, or was it the Tom Morrow
I don't
2.0?
remember, but it's all kind of the Imagineering. If you go to the Imagineering channel on YouTube,
Right.
whether it's We Call It Imagineering or the asking, I think it was I believe was We Call It Imagineering, but it might
Right.
have been the Tomorrow one.
But anyways, one of the more recent ones, they did show how they create some of these spider webs, cobwebs, and things around there. And it really is interesting, and recommend you, if you haven't seen it yet, it
Hmm.
is fun to see some of that behind the scenes creation of this area.
Yeah, I was interested. I didn't know until I
Right.
saw that, and I was fascinated by that. That's how they do it. And
Yeah.
no spoilers here, but if you want to check it out, definitely check it out.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, that's kind of a simple concept.
Right, made me want to try it.
I know, right? Another one that is also very impressive, at least to me, and I remember the first time going through that, and that's with Flight of Passage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yes, it's almost like it's building as you're getting through that queue, and then once you enter that lab, it's just like, oh my gosh, and you see that life size avatar, and I mean, it is impressive, and it's like, whoa, there's something big happening here, and you're in it, it's you're going to be a part of it. You're not just seeing it, like it's not just a walk through museum. You're going to be part of that story in the
Yeah,
next
you're
piece.
part of the lab, part of the experience, part of it all, and knowing you're going through, and then this is what's going to be. Eventually, you're going to get on your banshee,
Right.
and you're going to be created an avatar of yourself. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. Another cue that is very impressive is Rise of the Resistance. Now, again, knowing that that was going to be a popular attraction, it is a very long area for the queue, a lot of space there, but you do have that. You have, you feel like you're in the cave, but you see all these, high-tech things that have to do with Star Wars, things that you recognize, but you again know that this is going to be something that's going to be major.
Well, and then the feeling of it, and the story of the resistance during that point within the Star Wars universe is the fact that it is kind of hiding out and trying to build itself from the First Order. And the First Order, we know from Galaxy's Edge, is on the other side of town, and they're always on the watch for the resistance. So the fact that they've kind of had to dig out these caves and put all these hidden artifacts and all the weaponry and all the different scanning devices and everything else that you're going to need it, as well as the base itself and the ships within this area
Right.
that are tricky to get into,
Yeah.
and somewhat well hidden, does lead to that whole storyline of that we're trying to recruit these new resistance members and have them join, but we want to keep it on the down low,
Right,
so
right.
it all
Yeah.
works.
Yeah, great. That's exactly right. It all works. So, another one that is impressive too is with Expedition Everest. That you do again when you're talking about artifacts and things like that that are really impressive in that area as well. I mean, you do, whether you think of museum or whatever, you do get a sense of that.
Well, this really is like a because in an Expedition Everest queue, they actually do have artifacts from people who have done expeditions to actual Mount
Yeah.
Everest in that queue. So that's pretty incredible on its own, right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. It gives more to the authenticity of the
Mhm.
story and everything. But, as you see in those, the actual queue is building. It's building into something big. It's impressive on its own, and it's you know it's going to be something big. The other one also is the Cosmic Rewind, Guardian the
Mhm.
Galaxy's Cosmic Rewind, that again has some major components of there, but they also have a lot of Easter eggs and things like that
Mhm.
to enjoy as you're walking through that area.
Speaking of Guardians of the Galaxy and a little bit of Tower of Terror, the other one is Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. When you go into that queue, because if you know the storyline for that, that is that you are basically getting into the collector's stronghold. And the fact that he is the collector means obviously he collects things. And so as you're going through that queue, there are all sorts of interesting artifacts and everything that you can find in there from yes, around the galaxy, but also around Disneyland itself. That if you keep your eye out, you might find some fascinating things through there that the collector has collected during this
Right.
time period. So it's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I know I'm being very repetitive, but I just really feel that personally that the Imagineers, and we know this, they put a lot of thought into these, a lot of research, but they really put some emphasis on the narrative in these attractions.
Yeah, Imagineers, they think it all out. I mean, again, people sometimes think that just throw things together or whatever. No, it goes down to every detail, and including the queue, and that's what makes this amazing. Again, we all wait in lines.
Right.
The fact that we can enjoy a portion of the line is amazing to think about. When you could still be 30, 40 minutes from the attraction,
Oh,
and
easily.
yet
Yes.
you're like, wow, look at that and look at that. Oh, I'm going to do this and this is fun. It's pretty impressive what the Imagineers have done.
Exactly. And that's actually a good lead in, honey, to the next slide and next thing we're going to talk about. And those are cues that actually we'll say cues that play back. They're things, activities that you can do in the cues. And some of them are some of the things we've talked about already, but I want to introduce some others. For example, if you're again watching on YouTube, this picture here is that in the Winnie the Pooh, the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh. It's that honey screen that you're actually like moving honey around and stuff like that. It's really interesting. But let's go in and see some of the other more notable attractions that have things that you can do, whether it's actual activities or more Easter eggs to really focus on or whatever. And we can start with the Haunted Mansion. Now, in that queue, there's especially at Walt Disney World, and I know they've made some changes over at the Disneyland queue as well for that. But there are a ton of things to do. Now, if you go during, like we do a lot of times with early entry, you're really not getting to appreciate some of those activities in that queue because you're just like, okay, it's rope drop or whatever.
Or if you use a lightning lane
Right.
or anything.
You're
Yeah.
just going onto the attraction that you might miss. But if you do find yourself in that queue or decide to go into that queue, there are some really great things to do. There's like things with musical instruments and stuff like that. There's actually, you can take a stab
Ah, I see what you did there.
at solving a mystery,
It's a murder
a
mystery
murder
on that.
mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, just some really fun, intricate things, and that was changes that they put to that queue that weren't there originally when it opened up. But I thought it really did enhance the queue experience there.
Yeah, especially like we haven't experienced since they've updated the Disneyland queue. I mean, it
Mhm.
is good and interesting and fun, and there are cool things there. But the Walt Disney World queue for a Haunted Mansion has always been, at least up until this point. Again, we haven't seen the new
Mhm.
Disneyland version of it, but so entertaining and interesting that yes, we rarely are seeing it, but
Right.
when we have, it's been amazing. Or there have been times when we've been on tours and we've had guides kind of take us through because they want
Right.
to point out
Yeah.
what all this work that the Imagineers have done to create interesting things outside of the attraction itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Good point. Another, I mentioned about the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh over at Walt Disney World. They have Rabbit's Garden, and there's a lot of things to do there, whether it's drumming things or pushing buttons and stuff like that.
A lot of great stuff to keep kids
Mhm.
from getting completely bored while waiting. Because that, let's be honest, we love the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh, but it is mostly an attraction focused on the younger Disney
Right.
fans for sure. And if they have to wait for 30, 40 minutes, I mean, let's be honest, it's tough to keep them
Yeah.
in check for a while. But when there's things for them to do in the queue itself, it makes the wait time a little bit easier for them.
Right. And it's things that they can do that other kids around them are also doing.
Mhm.
It's loud. It's, very active. I really felt that they did a lot of great, um, adding a lot of great components there, but again, very much keeping theming going on there. Now, as I mentioned, some of the other things that make a queue interesting, or is with some of the Easter eggs or things about it. And when I was thinking about this, I thought Tiana's Bayou Adventure. There's so many things as you're walking through
Mhm.
that queue. And some can be very touching. And I think you can remember our first experience there where we got choked up through parts
Yeah, I
of
mean,
it.
it's so much family involved
Mhm.
in that queue. And I'll be honest with you, our first time in, we got to actually experience it a bit but then when we went, it was during a special event. And as the evening wore on, there were fewer people riding the attraction. So we were zipping through that area. So we didn't get to experience it maybe as much as we would have
Mhm.
liked. But at least the first few times through, we were able to take it all in and see a lot and not everything. There's still
Right.
things that I
Yeah.
would love to see within that queue that all wrap around Tiana's life, Tiana's family's life, the other people within New Orleans that have touched Tiana's life, and it's pretty, and the story that kind of goes along with this attraction that happens kind of after the movie The Princess and the Frog.
True.
There's some of that within this
Right. It's
all.
all
Yeah, yeah.
incorporated. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, like, seeing Tiana's father's gumbo recipe framed, I thought, ooh,
Hmm.
that really brought tears to
Hmm.
my eyes. Now I have a couple fun facts about this. The Imagineers, they took from the film the fact that Tiana's dad was a World War I veteran in the army. So what they incorporated in the queue here are pictures of him like in his uniform, but with Tiana. So again, very like you're saying, family and just the love and
Hmm.
and then showing the respect of him as a veteran. The other thing is, and if you're again watching on YouTube, you see this little to-do list here. It's a to-do list board that in the queue is Tiana's things to get ready, and it includes two names that are not from the film, Carmen and Charita. I hope I'm saying that right. But they are two Walt Disney Imagineers who, had a key role into this attraction. So they, put that into the attraction queue as well. So I
Which
thought,
is not, I mean, that you can definitely point to, but it happens in a lot of attractions.
yes,
Like,
yes,
yes, of course, we know down Main Street USA, there's a lot of people that have impact on the Disney company as a whole, but yes, in the parks, of course. But even within the attractions, looking at you, Haunted Mansion, there are a lot of names that are dropped or put out there on different plaques and all sorts of different things that have to significantly to do with the construction
right.
of those attractions, including this one, Tiana's Bayou Adventure.
Exactly. I'm going to get into some more in just a second. I also want to point out a fun queue that we enjoyed, and it was, to me, I found it very amazing, was actually Peter Pan's flight in Magic
Mm-hmm.
Kingdom. They have a room that you go through, for example, that there's shadows on the walls with bells, and you reach up and you ring the bells. It's amazing that that happens. Or you're trying to catch butterflies and things like that. Or you see Tinkerbell flying around
Mm-hmm.
and then something happening where she lands in the room. It's just really very creative kind of again storyline with what you're going to go through here.
Again, it's one of those things that brings you in because you're in the kid's bedroom,
Hmm.
essentially, so it's kind of that lead up if you go through Peter Pan to where Peter arrives and takes you on this amazing flying journey that you're about to go on. It is one of my favorite queues. I'm already gonna sell one of my favorite queues. I love the queue in Peter Pan's flight at Walt Disney World at Magic Kingdom. They don't have it at Disneyland like
Right.
that. But man, at Magic Kingdom it is so good. And then I see new and interesting things that happen in that queue. We don't go on it a lot because a lot of times the queue is way too
Right.
long for us. But when we do, I always get excited. It's one of the rare cues that I get excited. It's like, I hope we get to pause right at that point right there for a little bit to
Right.
just soak it all in, because it's amazing.
Yeah, and like I said, the technology, it looks very simple, but I'm sure it's that one isn't as simple in terms of pulling that off, where
Mhm.
you can look like you're ringing a bell that's
Mhm.
a shadow on the wall, or something like that. But it's also very amazing to me how many people walk through that queue and they're, just not paying attention to
Right.
some of those things, and it's just like, "Oh, you're missing out on something really cute and cool," but
No, I
anyways.
love that entire attraction, but that is one of my favorite
Yeah.
parts. I mean, it really,
It
really
really,
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really it's like attraction B,
Mhm.
But, the other one I wanted to point out here in terms of having some things to do and looking for some of the, Easter eggs and stuff is Indiana Jones over at Disneyland. There's obviously a lot of Easter eggs, but, and things to do, like where they have the "Do not pull rope" sign,
Which everybody
yeah,
pulls.
everybody pulls. Now some fun facts there. There are 14 types of stamped concrete used throughout that queue, and many bearing messages of doom for the guests to try to, figure out or decode. Now, you talked about some of the signage or incorporating some of the Imagineers things in there. Here at the Obelisk of Doom, they have the initials of the prominent members of the Indiana Jones Adventure team stamped into the
Mhm.
concrete there. The other fun fact to this ride that I thought was really cute is that they wanted a mature forest to be in that queue to look, and so they actually consulted with Bill Evans, who was one of the original landscapers and worked very much with the Jungle Cruise, and he actually helped them because they needed to take some of the area of Jungle Cruise, relocate some of those trees and
Mhm.
everything, and how to incorporate them and preserve them, keeping them as part of this attraction as well.
It does feel like it really, if you've gone to Adventureland and experienced Jungle Cruise right next to the Indiana Jones adventure there, the way those two flow together and make
Mhm.
sense with one another, it is pretty incredible and impressive. And it gives me even more high hopes for Tropical Americas when they do their version.
Right.
It's going to be a bit different, Indiana Jones version, but what they're going to do with that space there, which
Yeah.
I think is going to be also incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Can't wait. Seven Dwarfs Mine Train at Magic Kingdom also has a lot of fun things to do there. And I don't know if you call this a fun fact or whatever, but there's these barrels that look like barrels of gem that you can spin. And if you do individual ones, you'll look on the ceiling and you see projections of like the dwarfs or whatever. But if
Mm.
you can get seven people, think of seven dwarfs, together to do it, actually another image appears. No spoilers here.
Wow, I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
mean, we
So,
haven't waited in that queue enough, I think, but
right.
yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you have a large party, a large group, and you can do all 7, get all 7 people in your group to do that, fine, but sometimes just talking to other
Yeah.
people in the queue, especially if you see them playing around, and saying, "Hey, let's do it together and watch what happens."
Right.
So,
That's
you know.
cool. That's great. That's good to
Mhm.
know. The next time I don't know when the next time we'll be in that queue will be, but
Yeah.
may try and take advantage of that
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, it's cool. Something that you can only do if you get the group working together.
Hmm.
The other thing of having some activities related to attraction queues is with the Play Disney app, and there are several of the games and several of the attractions that have games that go with it or trivia or whatever. I think one of the ones that we've seen, and to me, it's pretty impressive, is at Soaring in Epcot. And you're actually competing with other people in the queue, and it gives the results on
Yeah,
the on
you're part of a team
right,
essentially. Yeah.
right. And I thought that's so creative,
Hmm.
and again, that can really help um, give you some ideas of fun you can have on an attraction or through the queue.
Yeah, I mean, also in Galaxy's Edge. I mean, yes, you can play throughout that area,
Hmm.
but also when you're in the queues for Smuggler's Run and for Rise of the
Mhm.
Resistance. There are things within that app that you can do while you're waiting in that queue, things to scan, things to look into,
Right.
sort of in a way virtually, and find out like what's in this crate, what's in this box, what's in, this. And the more you find things, the more going to build you up pseudo points within it,
Right,
but
right.
it's fun. It's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you something else to do,
Hmm.
especially if you've been through the queue before and you feel like you've seen some of the
Hmm.
things, doing something different, another activity
Hmm.
is something that can also be fun.
And a way to get the kids involved too. When they're,
Right,
again, we're talking about things that maybe they're getting a little bored, and they need something to do. You bring out the app for a little bit and you show them, look, and
right,
then they'll start actively. Oh, there's a crate over there, Dad, or there's a crate over there, Mom. Let's scan that
right,
and see
right.
what's in that one.
Exactly.
That might get them excited and interested and a little less bored as
For
they're
sure.
waiting on
For
for
sure.
45 minutes or so in the
Yeah.
queue.
So it's cool that they have that. And it's also interesting to see with Disney that they have these things, and I'm sure they have to figure out a balance to provide entertainment, but also not slow things
Hmm.
down, that it stops people from moving
Right.
through the queue. So, anyways, I think they do a
They
pretty
do
good
a pretty
job.
good balance of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, anyways, the other thing, anything else you want to add to any of that?
No, I mean, I
Yeah.
think all that is I mean, it's numerous. There are so many things that we're not even going to touch on here
Right,
that you can discover and on the Play Disney app. And if you're going to use the Play Disney app, no, it will sap your battery on your phone.
right.
You're going to want to have some sort of power rod or something along those lines where you can charge it up. But when you can use it, it does. There are some fascinating things you can do within some of these attractions. But yeah, I mean, just so many things to do and experience and see in
Right.
all these queues for sure.
Exactly. All right. So, the next piece that I thought really we should address is the issue of access and innovation that makes any person going to Disney comfortable. And I know people know of DOS. I think a lot of people know about DOS, and a lot of people know about Rider Switch. But there's other things too that wanted to make sure we highlight and bring to your attention because you might not know about it, and it could make it something that is beneficial for you or your party. Now we talked about when talking about Rider Switch. Now we got to experience that more recently on Test Track. I thought that was really well done in that area, and I was really happy to see how it made Scott feel
Mhm.
comfortable. We both had that opportunity to do that ride. So I mean, you think of like the single rider kind of thing, but this we got to go through the whole queue
Mhm.
together.
Yeah, and rider swap is such an important thing in general because there's so many of you are like, oh, I don't want to go to Disney. I got little ones that I want to experience these attractions, but I got little ones they'll never go on them, so I'll
Or they
never
might
get the
not
chance.
meet the height
Or
requirements.
yeah, and they'll never get the we'll never get the chance to experience these. Or maybe there you have multiple kids and there's some that can and some that can't. And yes, it's disappointing for the kids that can't yet. But you don't want to take away the experience from those that can, but they're not ready to ride alone at the same time. So the fact that you can go with parents and they can experience it separately, but also together with kids, it is really beneficial, and it's one thing that Disney has approached and done so very
Right.
well, I think.
Exactly. Now there's another actually I wasn't really aware of this component until I was doing the research for this, is that they have a attraction queue re-entry or meetup process. And so you don't have to be part of DOS for this. This could be for anybody. So let's say you have somebody that maybe the buildup in the queue is a little bit too much for them, but you know that they're going to enjoy the attraction itself. Is when you get to that attraction, you tell the cast member at the entrance that you are looking for that re-entry portion of how to do that. And so, what the cast member can explain to you with that particular attraction is where the rest of your party can go through the queue and at what point they should notify the other portion of the party to come into the queue. Um, I'll give an example. Like before we did DOS, um, if we were in a long line and there were kids really crying, Scott would get nervous
Hmm.
because he thought, "Oh, maybe something bad's gonna
Hmm.
happen."
Hmm.
And so, having that opportunity would have been good to say, "Okay, For example, you could go through the queue and tell us at what point we get to meet up with you, that he wouldn't have to experience that. But again, you might have somebody in your party who doesn't qualify as DOS, but something about being in a queue or a particular attractions queue could be disturbing. And how do you minimize that impact on them, so you can have that, and then have that ability to either re-enter or meet up with other guests in your party.
That's great, because I didn't know that that existed either, but I appreciate that and I understand it. And I think that's fantastic. I mean, many people use it anyway without actually doing it officially, but the fact that you're doing it officially in the Disney is saying, we understand.
Right.
And this is important, and we'll give you that opportunity to do so without having to kind of cheat the system.
Exactly.
Is great. I love that.
Yeah, and you don't have to, and it's on Disney's website. You do not have to explain why you want to access this service just to utilize it. You can just let them know you are looking for that attraction queue re-entry or attraction queue meetup. So
really cool. I like that. Like I said, I had no idea that existed, so I'm glad you found that.
I mean, the other thing that you can do with queues is you might have somebody in your party who may choose not to go on it, whether it's a child or an adult, but they want to experience still part of this, or the queue is just asking a cast member when you enter, what's the exit point that you can go as long as you can on that queue until it's time to load onto the attraction.
Yeah, because there's a lot of attractions that maybe you want to experience some of that build up, but you don't want, like, let's just, for example, like maybe Tron. Maybe the attraction itself is a little bit too much for them. Tower of Terror. Maybe the attraction itself is too much for somebody, but they do want to experience kind of the storytelling and some of the imagery and everything around it. That's a way to do it, and still, find that exit point where you can get out and not get the so-called worst of the attraction for that general person.
Right. Yeah. And so again, you don't have to be DOS member for any of these types of services. And I think that's, very beneficial for a lot of groups.
Completely agree.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Anyways, yeah. So that's kind of a, like I said, a review of the types of queues, what we see in them, what you can experience, how they are part of the story. And I didn't know if you have anything else to add to any of that.
No, I mean, I think it's an amazing breakdown of some of the queues. Again, there's too many to go through here. There are so many amazing queues within the Disney parks that you can experience interesting things. And again, some of it is right out there, out front, and you'll realize it. And some of it is storytelling and interesting things that either you'll need to do research to find out, or you may discover it along the way, even though you've been on the attraction 100 times and you've never seen it before. Or it just could be so subtle that it's enhancing the attraction and you never really realize that it's there.
True. Good point.
Yeah.
So should we go through our favorites?
Yeah, well, we got to start with yours because, Michelle's lists are always the best list. Michelle, what are your favorite queues?
So are we doing like 3?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. These are in no particular order, and I kind of mentioned it during the discussion, but I actually really do like the Jungle Cruise at Disneyland, that Jungle Cruise queue at Disneyland specifically. I like the one at Walt Disney World too, but the one at Disneyland, I actually, even though it's a longer wait, don't have a problem with doing where you have to go upstairs and back downstairs. I just think it's really kind of, just a little quirky, and I like it.
That's cool. Yeah, but you're thinking like, oh, we're right there. We're going to be at this attraction in no time. Then you go upstairs. You're like, oh,
wait, I'm going upstairs.
It's going to be a little longer.
But and then you get to go back downstairs, but you get to see I think their detail in that queue is really amazing, and I just love it.
Right. I completely agree with you on that.
Okay, what's one of yours?
One of mine, well, we've already talked about a couple of these. How about Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway at Disneyland? Again, it's basically a museum piece to Mickey Mouse and his friends. That you go through there and you see so many interesting artifacts, especially for the Mickey Mouse shorts. There's so many interesting things to see, to check out, to do. Potato Land is right in there. You want to get your picture at Potato Land, there it is for you. I find it fascinating. Not as much the one at Disney's Hollywood Studios, although there are some interesting things in that as well. But man, the one at Disneyland is chef's kiss. It's so good.
Right. Yeah. Agreed.
What's about you? What's your next one?
I think one of my next one is Flight of Passage. I just think it is very impressive, very memorable. And it just, to me, it feels like it really does feel like it's part of the story. Like I don't necessarily see where the attraction starts versus the queue ending or something.
Yeah, we're going to talk about, for me, things that we've already talked about because I love them so much. Peter Pan's Flight is another one of my favorites because of that fact that you get to that area, and I find it so amazing that you're basically in the darling kid's bedroom, and Tinkerbell flies in and makes different appearances. She flies to different areas and makes things happen within that room. But like you mentioned, the shadows where you can kind of do things as you're passing along the line, you may see it and you just reach up and something happens.
Yeah.
And it's all incredible and interesting technology and magic in so many Disney ways. And it does bring you into that you're getting set to fly with Peter Pan.
Right.
That's
true.
Phenomenal.
Yep. Yeah. My other one, and one we've talked about, but I don't know that I distinguished as much, the Star Tours at Walt Disney World at Disney Hollywood Studios. I just feel like, and I'm kind of sad now because it's an easy walk-on one that you're just going through that exterior part of the queue so quickly, but that is just so impressive. I mean,
it's supposed to be indoor. You're on
indoor.
Yeah.
But if you're really taking the time, you can hear the sounds of the Ewoks and stuff like that. I mean, and it's just so impressive looking. And of course, once you're inside, it's just so hilarious and fun, and just love it. So I just find that an amazing queue.
Right. Also, by the way, Endor, the forest moon, or as some people know it, the farthest moon of Endor. I'm looking at you, Pat. That was the first really, really immersive, like when you're looking up and there's that AT-AT walker there. And it's just, to this day, I still am impressed by that. And then you go to the back and it's a movie set, essentially, as it's supposed to be for Disney's Hollywood studios.
Right. Yeah.
So, for my last one, very simple. It's more of a simple queue, but I love it so much. It's a small world at Disneyland. I mean, that entire facade is gorgeous, beautiful. It's all Mary Blair. It's just Mary Blair shouting at you in one giant wall. And the clock and the parades that happen every quarter hour, and every, the little characters that come out for the clock every quarter hour. And then you get all the animal topiaries that are out there, as the boats are going through it. It's so simple, but it's so warm and wonderful and shouts joy. It is such a big part of that attraction, and you're just there and experiencing it as you're waiting to go on this wonderful journey as the children get together and sing about how it's a small world.
Yeah, from around the world. Yeah, agreed. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are my favorites.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good ones.
So we'd love to know what your favorites are. What are we missing here? What queues are those that you don't mind waiting in line with because they're so magical? Let us know. Social media. Let us know on our Gmail account. We'd love to share them in future shows. But man, those queues are so great because if you know,
that the
storytelling really begins in the Disney parks.